So we got Trap Lil Ross giving us some 1-2 steps like Sierra about the Lil Durk case. Apparently, Lil Durk's cell phone is being used as some crazy evidence with his homie Diddy. It's some messages that's been sent about Quando Rondo, but I believe it's just the dude Diddy like sharing a post. I don't think he made the post. But with that all being said, man, they saying that Lil Durk's evidence was devastating in court today. Let's get into this content. It's Trap Lil Ross. And Trap Lil Ross, first young and Hefe case not is, bro, be careful at them courthouses, my boy.
Day 4 of the Lil Durk trial, we had a big update. So look, we were expecting testimony from OTF Jam today. I'll be real with you guys, didn't happen, okay? Now, I'm not sure if something happened behind the scenes that meant that didn't end up happening. There were a few private conversations, a few private sidebars with the judge and counsel on both sides. We don't know exactly what happened, but there were some very big details that came out, and I'll give you an update now, and then I'm probably going to go back and do like a really big deep dive and give you all of my notes that I possibly can in one long video. But the big stuff that went down was, I actually can't believe that we saw some of this stuff, okay? Obviously, there was a huge back and forth about this supposed message that Didi had sent on Instagram at Quando Rondo, talking about why you ain't have your pipe gang. Well, it was made clear by Didi's counsel, okay, that wasn't him sending that message. That was actually an example where he had shared a post by someone else. Now, I feel like Durk's lawyers were looking really pissed off because Didi's lawyers were really making a big point out of this, but it low-key just amplified the fact that Didi had shared this post, which was a video of Quando Rondo screaming no over Savia Robinson, Lil Pab's body, and this kind of offensive post. He was painstakingly going over it, saying that our client isn't the one that posted this, that's not who put it across, he didn't write the caption, and it's like Brian Steele was just looking like, bro, can we get this screenshot of the victim being murdered off the screen? Like, they didn't show the screenshot on screen, it was blurred, but it was just like, it was driving attention to the fact that allegedly the people involved were bragging and posting to each other about the news of what had happened. They looked kind of pissed off, and what made it even worse is that in the midst of showcasing this piece of information, what ended up happening was that allowed the prosecution to say, okay, bet, well, we're going to point a few things out if you still want to talk about this. They pointed out a couple of comments that were underneath the post. It was the TMZ video of Lil Pab on the ground. Somebody commented, and the
video of Lil Pab on the ground was probably really damning evidence because that was a really dramatic and gruesome scene.
They had an OTF-related page. Their page was OTF Bad Boys. They said no expiration with a devil emoji. No expiration on that get back is what they were trying to say. So the prosecution were like, okay, we'll point that out. Somebody else commented, NBA stands for nobody alive, all right? Nobody alive. This was obviously a reference to the NBA Youngboy beef, okay? And the prosecution even said, oh, was Durk beefing with a guy called Youngboy? Now, they objected to that, and the judge asked for a sidebar, and they basically said, look, we're going to be talking about that stuff later on. But
I don't think that would have anything to do with the situation. I can see how they would argue it, but if I was Durk's lawyer, I would be like, nope. Nothing to do with it, unrelated. We're not here for anything that happened with NBA Youngboy.
Didi's lawyer, he kind of brought the heat back onto everybody by accident by trying to argue this really minute point that didn't matter. And even the prosecution were like, look, we never said that he wrote the caption, but he shared it. And this is what it was, and this is what was shared. And then this is the comments that were elicited. It really wasn't great. Somebody had apparently sent a Futures TV account post, so that's a very big Instagram post, to Quando Rondo to Lil Durk of the Quando Rondo footage, the TMZ footage, okay? It was basically in a string of chat between Durk and somebody that worked for him on August the 20th, 2022 at 12:23 a.m. The person that worked for Durk sent the clip that was on Futures TV. Now, that was crazy, okay? In addition to that, this was so bad, I couldn't believe it. Anybody that's been following this closely will know that there was a Quando Rondo challenge that this, Chicago-based Instagram, he the biggest BD, he says, right? Famous Richard. He basically put it out there that he was doing the Quando Rondo challenge. He made a skit where he basically reenacted Quando Rondo's reaction to seeing Lil Pab's body, the TMZ video. Somebody sent Durk the famous Richard Quando Rondo challenge. It was on it.
Yeah, he was like, no.
Phone, and they played it in full in court. That was a bad look. Like, these are all things that you really wouldn't want your client having shown in court, okay? So they basically say, yeah, this was basically making fun of Quando Rondo. That's what was going on, all right? And then after that, Brian Steele tried his best effort to try and kind of talk down some of these things, especially these messages where Durk had said, don't book no flights in no names connected to me. Now, what was super messed up about that was that there weren't really too many defenses. Brian Steele kept trying to say, oh, you know, there's no proof that Durk knew what was going on, and the prosecution kept saying, yeah, he's saying don't book no flights. He knows that you're the one that books flights, and he's saying don't book no flights connected to me. And Brian Steele talking about, well, the flights were connected in names that connected to Durk, so that shows that they don't listen to him. And the prosecution were like, well, it sounds like he did the job before he got the message, or he was already on it, he had already made up his mind, he made a mistake. The prosecution said, we think he made a mistake. A lot of people made a lot of big mistakes in this case, so that was pretty bad. Okay, there was a previous message.
Now, as long as you can get the defense, the defense to make, as long as you can get the DA to make more mistakes than the defense attorney, you're good. The amount of mistakes that come from Durk's side will work in the better. Let the prosecutor fuck up. Let the district attorney fuck up. Let the state's attorney, well, I guess the U.S., United States, let them mess up. But y'all stay on point.
I'm not going to lie, I'm going to throw some rampant speculation into this. This is just my opinion. But after the murder of Lil Pab, all right, this person that worked for Durk, who had been going back and forth about the flights, the person that booked the flights, they sent Durk a message basically saying, oh, congratulations on Jay for the wedding. Now, Brian Steele made an interesting point, and then I'm just going to throw in some speculation. I know this is going to hurt a lot of Durk fans' feelings. But basically, Brian Steele said to the detective that had worked on this and gone over the phone, they said, did you research what wedding this was he was referring to? Did you ever connect or think to connect the wedding post to the flights? Do you know who this Jay person is that was mentioned in there? Did you know about any plans to go to a wedding abroad? Did you even try and work out who Jay was, who Jay's wedding was? The detective said no. I'm not going to lie, I'm speculating possibly, just possibly, that this was coded language, and congratulations to Jay on the wedding was congratulations on the get back for one. That's just a speculation. That could be the case. I don't know for sure, but I'm not going to lie. The government were like, no, we didn't look into no Jay's wedding. Now, obviously, they can't prove it. They're not going to bring attention to it. But the only conversation Durk's having with the guys that booked the hitmen after the hit happened is make sure hey, congratulations to Jay on his wedding. I don't know about that one. I feel like that one was...
I don't know. That seems like the United States is slipping.
That was really the best that Brian Steele could do at that point. And look, it was a good effort, but I'm not sure it was that convincing. So we heard testimony from a firearms expert who basically confirmed that it was automatic gunfire, that one of the shooters had used a switch. And the way he described it was crazy. He said a switch, it turns a Glock into automatic gunfire. He said that this is consistent with the shell casings firing out in a line. He said this is a still screenshot of 5 shell casings in motion in the air at the same time. There's 5 shell casings all flying through the air all at the same time, and he's basically saying, look, this is consistent with the switch, the muzzle flashes, that's what was going on. We then heard that there would apparently be some testimony that relates to Doody Lowe. Now, they didn't really get into it. I was thinking, what are they going to say about Doody Lowe? What's going on with Doody? I just squashed my beef with Doody Lowe outside the courthouse, so I'm thinking, okay, I hope there's nothing crazy on Doody Lowe. We didn't actually see anything from Doody Lowe today. Nothing. Silence from Doody Lowe. But they said that there were a series of messages that were apparently incriminating in group chats that involved Doody Lowe. They had a phone that was named Durk's iPhone, and Durk's iCloud email account, I won't say the full thing, but part of it was Spot 'em Got 'em. That was part of his iCloud email address. So he out here, Spot 'em Got 'em on delete my iCloud. If the Fed say that, they owe me, though. Your iCloud is registered to Spot 'em Got 'em. And
this whole situation is wild. Now, when you look at the situation in totality and you look at the situation for what it's worth, Durk is just caught in a situation where far too much technology is being used, number one. And I'm not going to lie, the shells being in the air 5 at a time is going to look crazy to a jury.
Allegedly spotting them and getting them. That's crazy, okay? But anyway, there was basically a bunch of kind of back and forths, and we saw the screenshots that were incriminating that were lifted from Durk's phone that was taken in Georgia. What was very, very interesting about that is that they showed this screenshot set of messages that was basically Durk trying to get Lil Tim's location after he'd been released from jail. What was crazy about that is it was basically a back and forth. Someone said, Ma said that, I don't know if this is his messages or if somebody else was forwarding him messages that they had, and they had a mole inside Lil Tim's camp. But basically, somebody said, Ma, they said they approached him to go home to Savannah, and someone said, okay, what you doing? They did that fast, and then they replied, I'm laying down, they just came and got on the bed, we listening to them talk. Yes, they said it's been in motion since he got released, but the judge just signed off on it. She said when they was releasing him, he was like, these N-words are asleep, but me getting released is going to wake him up. And then the reply And I think they didn't really talk much about this text. I think they're going to bring it up and analyze it in more detail. But I think what they were inferring that was Durk maybe talking to somebody that's got some connection with them. But basically, allegedly, the response was, can she still get the address? And someone said, yeah, she's just waiting on you to tell her what to do. So that was apparently the efforts to get Lil Tim's address. That's not going to help with the stalking charges, but also...
The stalking charges is going to be crazy because the stalking charges give premeditation and conspiracy. You were hunting your prey. It wasn't enough to just go find him and catch him slipping. You were actively chasing this person, actively stalking this person, actively pursuing this person. That looks bad in front of a judge and a jury. But Durk's defense still has a chance to prove that none of this is true, and this is all just a mischaracterization of who Lil Durk is, or in this case, isn't.
DJ Akademiks' page came up several times. Apparently, Durk had a screenshot of Akademiks' page on his IG. He had screenshotted the TMZ report that Akademiks reposted on his page of Quando Rondo getting shot at Georgia in 2021. So clearly, Durk is watching along all of Akademiks' stuff, all right? Obviously, they did an interview together that's going to get played eventually, but basically, they're saying that Durk... He was locked in. He was watching Akademiks' page. If anything happens and he's screenshotting it, it's coming from Akademiks' page. That was crazy. Now, we eventually heard testimony and some group messages between Durk and this person that worked for him that booked the flights, all about how he was feeling after King Von died. This was very tragic. After that, somebody had said to Durk, love you, we got to grow old together. You know I'm overprotective of you at all costs. You're like my real little brother for real. And right after King Von died, there were a bunch of back and forths. Unfortunately for Durk, a lot of these were quite incriminating. They said that Durk had at least 17 numbers between 2018 and 2024. He changed his numbers frequently, and there was a message between Didi and Durk where basically Durk said he deletes all of his texts. They said, Durk basically said, I deleted my text. It was today. Didi said, you deleted it? And then Durk played a voice message, which we actually then heard, basically saying, he basically said, yeah, I delete my text every day, my whole thread. I don't want it on my phone. So that really wasn't a great look. He deletes his text every single day. Like, what are you doing to delete your text? How you got the time to delete your text every day? That sounds long. But anyway, we went back and forth. We heard a whole bunch of evidence and testimony about...
I mean, but that's probably for the best, because imagine, if he didn't delete those texts. You see text messages they got their hands on. Imagine the text messages they weren't able to get because he erased them.
These flights, we get the gist. I don't need to tell you over and over again that somebody working for Durk booked those flights. I don't need to tell you that over and over again, but we heard it relentlessly about these flights, okay? There was a message where Durk said, this is my new number, lock in. Vonnie, he's my assistant. And he said, I'm going to give you his contact. I want to see you really lock in. I know it's crazy. When do you leave? Now, I don't know who that message was to, but obviously we're going to find out later on. Obviously, we saw a bunch of texts over and over and over again. But what was then interesting is they discussed King Von. They showed King Von with OTF and O-Block chains. They basically said O-Block indicates what neighborhood Von is from and that he's a black disciple. And every time that gangs was mentioned, Brian Steele was having a tantrum. I object. And then the judge was kind of like, well, look, he's allowed to say that he's got an affiliation. We already established certain things are going to be allowed to be talked about in this situation. Okay, that is what it is. But basically, Brian Steele was objecting to everything they established.
But I can understand why Brian Steele would object, because it paints him as a gang member. He doesn't want this person painted as a gang member. He doesn't want the person that he's defending painted as somebody who is, just out here being a menace to society.
That King Von was a BD. They said OTF, the family was Lil Durk's label. King Von was signed to the label. Von was signed to OTF. They showed Durk and Von in the red fitted caps, both of them wearing OTF chains. They proved pretty strong connections between them. And basically, after King Von died, we heard about some of the really tragic messages that had been sent back and forth with Durk basically saying how affected he was. He said, blood, this one got me like Newski, who was his cousin, who obviously was killed in front of him. And, there's definitely a really messed up irony in this case, in that Quando Rondo, allegedly, they haven't said it in the trial, but allegedly Lil Pab is Quando's cousin, or at least like a cousin to him. Obviously, Newski was Durk's cousin. Durk is famously pictured running to the scene and breaking down at the scene of Newski's murder. Now we're seeing all of this footage being shared around of Quando Rondo breaking down his cousin Lil Pab's murder, and Durk allegedly the cause of it. So Durk said, blood, this one got me like Newski. Now, weirdly, the prosecution said, do you know who Newski is? And they said no. And then they tried to ask in a different way, and the judge...
That's crazy that these niggas is just passing around trauma to one another. So you know what it feels like to be in this man's exact situation, and you've, reacted the same or if not similar way, and just not even tripping, gonna make somebody else feel the way that you was made to feel. That is absolutely incredible.
There was an objection, and the judge sustained. So weirdly, it seemed like the FBI agent on the stand kind of messed up, and then basically didn't get his opportunity to say who Newski was, which, to be honest, I think was very relevant. But regardless, obviously, I know this case better than damn near everybody, okay? But after that, we basically saw messages back and forth between that person from Durk's team who booked the flights, and he said, yeah, I can see you're down about this. I see it in your face. Durk said, I'm dead inside, blood. I feel like I lost one of y'all. This is real. I can't fool victim. And basically, we ended up seeing that they'd gone back and forth. Durk actually sent the clip of King Von's death to that contact. They basically, you know, showed the clip. We saw all of the clips. They played some... I ain't gonna lie, they played footage that I've never seen before of the King Von death. They showed a whole bunch of stuff that we hadn't seen before in excruciating detail that I was completely unfamiliar with. There was kind of extended footage of Quando walking around before he got jumped by King Von. It was a much longer and a completely crystal clear 4K video. Von obviously hops out the black truck and jumps Quando. Now, we saw the next angle, and obviously we could see Lil Tim shooting Von in a lot more detail. You could see the muzzle flash, you could see the gun kind of, I don't know, the slide kicking back or whatever. I'm not a firearms expert, but basically we kind of saw all of that in great detail. It was very obvious. People always saying, oh, Von got killed by the police. That's cap. That's not what happened, okay? It clearly...
When a situation is going on, especially in a stand your ground state like Georgia, you got to remember, like, these dudes are from the South, man, talking about Quando, Rondo, and Lil Tim and all that. Not saying that Chicago doesn't have what it has, but you can't just accost people in the state of Georgia and think that, you know, they don't have the right to defend themselves. And in this situation where King Von jumps out first on Quando Rondo, Lil Pab does have legal right in Georgia to stand his ground and defend his friend, you know, even if it is by using, unfortunately, in this situation, unalignment force.
Was Lil Tim. You could see the gun going off. And what was really interesting is we saw, obviously, now we know that Vonnie was the one driving the car, but it was weird because you kind of saw Muwop sort of holding everyone up a little bit. Like, all four of them try and cram into the back of the car and there's not enough space. And Vonnie's trying to drive away in the car and he's stopping because Muwop's not all the way in the car. He's trying to cram himself into the car. It's too full. They ain't closing the door. He damn near sits on top of somebody to get in the back of the car and then it drives off. But it's like Muwop kind of slowed the getaway down a little bit by insisting that he was in the car. Now, that's no disrespect to him. I'm not saying it's his fault. I don't think anything could have been done to save Von, but what I do know is that now you can see that in detail. You can see that it's like he wasn't leaving his mans behind, but that kind of slowed things down a little bit. Now, apparently, after somebody had actually sent Lil Durk a video of one of Quando Rondo's associates dissing King Von. It was that famous song where he said, free Lil Tim, hold up, wait, free King Tim. And he said he's smoking on Von. Obviously, I've covered all of that in my Demon Slayers video. But Durk was sent that video and he replied, yeah, just wait till that get back. So after that, there was a bunch of other audio messages that were kind of sent back and forth. Some stuff that we'd heard, you know, that we'd already kind of heard. And there was a big audio message in a big group chat that had Didi, Doody Low, Booney Mo, Wook, Durk, other people. So there was a bunch of group chats, basically Durk saying that stuff we'd already heard, but he ain't gone on the phone to squash it. This is for Von and D-Thang. If I'm about it for my brothers, you can test me, call about peace, take a piece of the switch. We heard that and we saw that message. They showed a audio message where Durk said, tell them dudes suck a dick on Lil Mo. He was putting a lot of stuff on Lil Mo. He's saying, you didn't do nothing on Lil Mo. We can have a boxing match for 20 million, but Quando, your homie Quando can die. You can't get on the phone and squash the beef. So I don't know who he was talking about, who he was going to fight, but that was very interesting. So there were a bunch of other things that I'll break down to you in a longer video, but Durk basically kept talking to people in the days after King Von died. He said, yeah, I'm good, but I'm in my feelings. I'm ready to put this together. There was apparently a conversation where Durk actually denied wanting to check himself out, if you get what I'm trying to say. His guy that booked...
This situation is crazy. And again, it just goes to show, like, despite the fact that these dudes having millions of dollars or, you know, having all this outward success, what it appears to be outward success in music and entertainment, you just never really know what's going on, because never in a million years would you think that Lil Durk would be fighting for his life through an unalignment for hire situation, and he would be, you know, getting into it where him and other rappers are getting into, you know, actual physical Call of Duty style situations in the middle of Beverly Hills on a Tuesday afternoon.
Flights said MF's going to be in their feelings a while. Shit ain't easy to get over. Von was a real one. Durk said, I know I ain't letting shit slide. Him dying turned me into a different animal. And then Durk says, what if that was you? Von would have been outside right now. And that person said facts. After that, Durk said, shit got me in my feelings too. I'm sick, but I'm not sending myself off. I can't, okay? So after this, there were kind of some interesting back and forths where basically Brian Steele was grilling them once again, and he was basically this was right at the end. Brian Steele actually had a back and forth with the judge and basically said, look, he was trying to grill the investigators on their lack of follow-ups. They're saying the agent met multiple witnesses 13 times with cooperator 1, 2, and 3, and basically was just saying, look, I feel like I can reserve my cross-examination until after the witnesses testify. And the judge was kind of getting a bit frustrated. He's basically saying, look, I'm not going to let you keep asking questions to make investigators look bad, trying to say, why didn't you interview them? Why didn't you record every single second of every interview? He said, I'm not going to let you make them look bad. You could always do more in an investigation, but it's not for you to say, oh, you met with them 12 times. Why didn't you meet with them 13? Why didn't you meet with them 9 million times? You're not a good investigator. So the judge kind of shut that down, and it sounded like one of Brian Steele's kind of best efforts to, kind of argue on behalf of Durk might be getting closed off if he can't keep asking those questions. So look, that's everything. I just fired it all at you in one video. I'm going to keep you guys updated on everything that happens. I'm not going to lie. A lot of free Durk fans out there today, but you know what I'm saying? I took them head on. I went out and spoke to a lot of them. Some of them were friendly, some of them weren't. And it is what it is, man. So I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Hopefully we get a big update. Hopefully we hear from Jam.
All right, man. We finna get up out of here to the next one. Y'all know the deal. It's red dots to the left. You know the rest. Say a prayer and be blessed. We are gone.